Hare Krishna everyone, so we're continuing with the path of perfection by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi, and we are continuing with the second chapter, Mastering the Mind and Senses, on page number 23. And what is this Maya? This is explained in the next verse of Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.5. Yaya samohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manutenartham tatkritam chabhipadyate. Quote, due to the external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. Unquote. Thus, the illusory energy has temporarily covered the conditioned souls. And who are these conditioned souls? Although finite, the conditioned spirit souls are as full as light as Krishna. The problem is that the conditioned soul identifies himself, with this material world. This is called illusion, false identification with matter. Although the individual spirit soul is transcendental, he engages in improper activities under the dictation of Maya, and this brings about his conditioning or false identification. This is very elaborately explained in the 7th chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In conclusion, our actual position is that of spiritual sparks, full of light. Now we are temporarily covered by this illusory energy, Maya, which is dictating to us. Acting under the influence of Maya, we are becoming more and more entangled in the material energy. The yoga system is meant to disentangle us, and the perfection of yoga is Krishna consciousness. Thus, Krishna consciousness is the most effective means by which we can disentangle ourselves from the influence of the material energy. Haribol, Chapter 3, Learning How to See God. Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. Quote, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his very mind will be the greatest enemy. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 6.6. The purpose of the yoga system is to make the mind into a friend instead of an enemy. In material contact, the mind is in a kind of drunken condition, as stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 20.117. Krishna bhuli se jiva anadi bahirmukha ateva maya taredeya samsara dukha. Quote, forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the Lord's external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him all kinds of misery in this material existence. Unquote. The living entity is constitutionally spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. As soon as the mind is contaminated, the living entity, because he has a little independence, rebels. In this state, the mind dictates, "Why should I serve Krishna? I am God." Thus, one labors under a false impression, and his life is spoiled. We try to conquer many things, even empires, but if we fail to conquer the mind, we are failures, even if we manage to conquer an empire. Even though emperors, we will have within us our greatest enemy, our own mind. Jitatmanah prashantasya Brahma-saṁhitā shitoshnasu kadukeshu tathamana pamanayo. Quote, "For one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 6.7. Actually, every living entity is intended to abide by the dictation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one is to be considered as having already reached the destination. One has to abide by superior dictation. When the mind is fixed on the superior nature, he has no alternative but to follow the dictation of the Supreme. The mind must admit some superior dictation and follow it. When the mind is controlled, one automatically follows the dictation of the Paramatma, or super soul. Because this transcendental position is at once achieved by one who is in Krishna consciousness, the devotee of the Lord is unaffected by the dualities of material existence, distress and happiness, cold and heat. The state is called samadhi, or absorption in the Supreme. Jnana vijnana triptatma kutasto vijitendriyah yukta ityuchate yogi samaloshrashma kanchanah. Quote, "A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and renunciation." What renunciations? Sorry. Acquired knowledge and realization. Of course, realization. The virtue of renunciation. Excuse me. So he is fully satisfied by virtue of jnana, that's knowledge, and vijnana, that's realization, realized knowledge. Jnana, vijnana. Knowledge, realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 6.8. Book knowledge without realization of the supreme truth is useless. This is stated as follows. Ata Śrī Kṛṣṇa janmādy na bhaved grahyam indriyaih sevon mukhehi jihvadau svayam eva spuratyadah. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 17.136. Quote, "No one can understand the transcendental nature of the name, form, quality, and pastimes of Śrī Kṛṣṇa through his materially contaminated senses. Only when one becomes spiritually situated by transcendental service to the Lord, are the transcendental name, form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord revealed to him. Unquote. This is from Padma Purāṇa. There are men in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and to reclaim all these conditioned souls, there are 18 Purāṇas. 6 Purāṇas are meant for those in the mode of goodness, 6 of those in the mode of passion, and 6 of those for those in the mode of ignorance. The Padma Purāṇa is written for those in the mode of goodness. Because there are many different types of men, there are many different Vedic rituals. In the Vedic literatures, there are descriptions of rituals and ceremonies in which a goat may be sacrificed in the presence of the goddess Kali. This is described in the Markandeya Purāṇa, but this Purāṇa is meant for the instruction for those in the mode of ignorance. It is very difficult for one to give up his attachments all at once. If one is addicted to meat eating and is suddenly told that he must not eat meat, he cannot do so. If one is attached to drinking liquor and is suddenly told that liquor is no good, he cannot accept this advice. Therefore, in the Purāṇas we find certain instructions that say in essence, alright, if you want to eat meat, just worship the goddess Kali and sacrifice a goat for her. Only then can you eat meat. You cannot eat meat just by purchasing it from the butcher shop. No, there must be sacrifice or restriction. Krishna читание. In order to sacrifice a goat to the goddess Kali, one must make arrangements for a certain date and utilize certain paraphernalia. That type of puja or worship is allowed on the night of the dark moon, which means once a month. There are certain mantras to be chanted when the goat is sacrificed. The goat is told, your life is being sacrificed before the goddess Kali. You will therefore be immediately promoted to the human form. Generally, in order to attain the human form, a living entity has to pass through many species of life on the evolutionary scale. But if a goat is sacrificed to the goddess Kali, he is immediately promoted to the human form. The mantra also says, you have the right to kill this man who is sacrificing you. The word mamsa indicates that in his next birth, the goat will eat the flesh of the man who is presently sacrificing him. This in itself should bring the goat eater to his senses. He should consider, why am I eating this flesh? Why am I doing this? I'll have to repay with my own flesh in another life. The whole idea is to discourage one from eating meat. Yeah, it's basically Vedic literatures, they allow to eat meat when before eating the goat you tell her, I kill you, but then you kill me. That's the mantra. So the whole idea is to discourage. Thus, because there are different types of men, there are 18 Purāṇas to guide them. The Vedic literatures are meant to redeem all men, not just a few. It is not that those who are meat eaters or drunkards are rejected. A doctor accepts all patients and he prescribes different medicines according to the disease. According to the disease. It is not that he gives the same medicine for all diseases, or that he treats just one disease. No, he offers a specific type of medicine to whomever comes, and the patient receives gradual treatment. However, the sattvic Purāṇas, like the Padma Purāṇa, are meant for those in the mode of goodness, for those who immediately are capable of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Brahma-saṁhitā it is stated, īśvaraḥ paramaḥ kṛṣṇaḥ sac-cid-ānanda-vigrahaḥ. The Supreme Controller is Krishna, who has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. This is the Vedic pronouncement, and we thus accept Śrī Kṛṣṇa as the Supreme Lord. Those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance attempt to imagine the form of God, and when they are confused, they say, "Oh, there is no personal God. God is impersonal or void." This is just the result of frustration. Actually, God has his form, and why not? According to the Vedānta-sūtra, janmādy asya yataḥ, Śrīmad Bhagavatam 1.1.1, quote, "The Supreme Absolute Truth is He from whom everything emanates." It is easy to see that we have different types of bodies, different types of forms. We must consider where these forms are coming from. Where have these forms originated? We have to use a little common sense. If God is not a person, how can his sons be persons? If your father is just a void, if he is not a person, how can you be a person? If your father has no form, how can you have a form? This is not very difficult, it is just common sense question. Unfortunately, because people are frustrated, they try to imagine some form, or they conclude that because this material form is temporary and troublesome, God must be formless. Indeed, because all forms in this material world must perish, God, of necessity, must be formless. One second. Brahma-saṁhitā specifically states that this conception is a mistake. īśvaraḥ paramaḥ kṛṣṇaḥ sac-cid-ānanda-vigrahaḥ. Brahma-saṁhitā 5.1. God has form, but his form is sac-cid-ānanda-vigrahaḥ. Sat means eternal, Chit means knowledge, and Ananda means pleasure. God has form, but his form is eternal and is full of knowledge and pleasure. We cannot compare his form to our form. Our form is neither eternal, full of pleasure, nor full of knowledge. Therefore, God's form is different. We will continue this topic tomorrow, because this chapter is called Learning How to See God. And this reminded me when Srila Prabhupada said that because people are frustrated, they try to imagine some form. And I was just thinking, just this thought came that, remember that, what was that? Macaroni monster? Something about macaroni or spaghetti monster. There was such an imaginary god of some religion in America, and Yes, so I deeply understand the frustration of many people in the world regarding basically theism, regarding God, regarding understanding the laws of nature, and therefore I humbly request all of you to check out the book that we're reading these days. It's in the episode of the in the description of the episode, along with the website. Oh yes, our website is up already. You can check it out. Also, you can see the catalog of all the books we have read so far. And you can read about the author, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, on the website itself also. And please, just try to share this knowledge with everyone that you can, because it is the saving rope in the midst of the ocean of the Kali Yuga, frustrating and troublesome time that we're living in. So help yourself, help your friends. Thank you so much for tuning in today again, and we shall see you next time. Hare Krishna.